Welcome to Truly Force-Free Animal Trainers webinars. Today's webinar is, do you care too much? Do you have compassion fatigue? I am Shannon Riley Coiner. I am a registered veterinary technician, certified professional dog trainer, knowledge assessed, and a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner. I created this webinar and have used it in different seminars because as a vet tech and a dog trainer, we oftentimes experience compassion fatigue, and our industry doesn't always recognize it. It's becoming more recognized in the veterinary field, but really not recognized a lot in dog training, shelter work, rescue work, or other work where we care for animals. Even groomers are caring for these animals, and sometimes it gets to be a little too much. Most of us get into this field because we love animals. So we don't get into this field because we want to be stressed, but it happens because we care so much about these animals. That is why I created this webinar. Do you care too much? Do you have compassion fatigue?
Sophia was somebody who could always do something and do it extremely well. When she's 12 years old, she's winning this piano competition playing Mendelssohn with the orchestra in San Francisco. I'm not kidding you. This woman, if she started doing something, she always did it the best. She always did it, right and to perfection, and she had high skills and all of that. She had a huge talent in being able to just see an animal and read and understand them. She had a real talent in that. It's not many times when you've got somebody who's really super sharp, super smart, who can also have you feel like you're their equal, no matter what level you are at. I was at work one day, it was kind of the end of the day, and I was checking my email, and I opened it up. There it was. Sophia's dead. And it says here, it looks like she took her own life. To the world that saw her, like the public persona, was so together, so positive, so cheerful, so bubbly. How could she ever have a problem? And sometimes when I'd heard that from people, I wanted to walk up and slap them across the face and say, she was human. My hopes for the industry are that we can take a very real look at, really more of the root problems that lead to an increased anxiety, increased, say, depression. You're supposed to be so smart, you're supposed to be able to work 80 hours a week, and you feel like you should know everything, you should be able to solve a problem, like we can fix everything. We can't. Don't think anybody is really got it so together that they never could be feeling that bad, because they very well may be. We should all be so very compassionate with each other. In being human, you're not supposed to be perfect. We're all supposed to trip and fall. And when you trip and fall, I'll stand by as you dust off your knees and walk by your side. Whenever I think about Sophia, I feel happy. She was a person who helped bring joy.
We are only as sick as our secrets. So that is something that I have learned over the time of learning about compassion fatigue for myself and for my colleagues, is we're only as sick as our secrets. Brene Brown states here, perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. If I look perfect and I do everything perfectly, I can avoid and minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. This is something that's a critical part of compassion fatigue because we oftentimes judge ourselves, blame ourselves, and criticize ourselves, and then have shame if things don't work out perfectly. As a vet tech, sometimes animals pass away or a diagnosis is missed, and that's normal. That's why they call it practicing medicine. As a dog trainer or a groomer or a rescue worker, we do the best that we can with the knowledge and the situation we have in front of us. But sometimes things don't work out perfect. And that idea for perfectionism just destroys us internally and then can affect our careers and our relationships. So we're going to go into that a little bit more further here. So here's a question for you to just contemplate. And if we were in person, I would ask you to answer these questions. What do you know about compassion fatigue? So compassion fatigue has been a word that people have been using more frequently, but not everybody knows what it is. So have you ever heard of compassion fatigue? Have you heard about it, but don't really know that much about it? Do you know a little bit about it? Or do you have it or have had it, or do you know somebody who has suffered from it? So there's a big, vast variety, and I realize that many of you here may fall into different levels. So I'm going to cover it about what it is, why we get it, how we can prevent it, just so that you get an idea and can be aware, because awareness is the first way of making any kind of change and helping ourselves. So I'm hoping that this will give you some more awareness. Another great Brené Brown quote is, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they are never weakness. So it's really important that you honor your feelings and that you recognize truth. So I think Brené Brown is an excellent place to go if you are more interested in this subject down the road and after you watch this webinar. She has multiple books, and she's just a really great storyteller and knowledgeable person, a social worker. She just has really transformed how we recognize shame particularly. Compassion fatigue is a real problem in the animal welfare field. We need to be aware of it. It's becoming a huge thing. Just like in the video that you saw at the beginning, Sophia Yin was an amazing animal behaviorist and was on top of the world of everything. And then all of a sudden we lost her. And it really made us open our eyes that sometimes people can have a smile on their face. They can look like they're okay, but in reality, inside they're suffering and they can be in a lot of pain. So whether this compassion fatigue is not limited to the animal field at all. This affects nurses, it affects teachers, it affects anyone who cares about other people or animals. So if you're not an animal care worker or you know somebody who might be suffering from compassion fatigue, this isn't something that's just isolated in the animal field. However, for me, being someone in the animal field, it has touched me personally because of we just care so much. So we need to understand and be aware of compassion fatigue. There are multiple studies out now, and in 2015, the Journal of Veterinary Medical Association found that 1 out of 6 veterinarians commit suicide. And that's a lot when you think about, we don't have, veterinary field is not as big as like the medical field. So we want to make sure that we're aware of this so we can help others. And in March of 2015, the American Journal of Prospective Medicine found that animal rescue workers' suicide rate was 5.3 in a million. So it's only shared by firefighters and police officers. And those are really stressful fields. So it's important that we really recognize how important this is to know, because we could be helping save colleagues' lives or our own. So what is compassion fatigue? It can be a little bit tricky. It has, kind of this name that we think should be understandable, but not always. Charles Figley, who has studied compassion fatigue quite a bit, said it's the cost of caring for others in emotional pain. So oftentimes, those of us who are in the animal field are very empathic and we have a lot of empathy towards others. That's why we get into it. We love animals and we also want to help people a lot of the times, and human medicine wants to help people. So these people and these animals come to us oftentimes in emotional pain. So we obviously want to care for those. Then being exposed to the trauma, neglect, abuse, and suffering can just wear us out. It's hard to watch animals that are abused. It's hard to watch them that are neglected, or humans. And sometimes it's just the fact that we're caring for them. Maybe in the veterinary field, someone can't afford the cost of the medicine. So we see that this animal might be suffering because their humans can't afford to take care of them. And that can really be really difficult for us. So we need to find ways to help ourselves when we're in this field. And animal care professionals are affected by emotional pain of the animals and the caregivers. So not only do we feel empathy and compassion for the animals, but we also feel empathy and compassion for the people that are bringing the animals in. So sometimes animal care workers actually have it double over the human world. If you're just a human nurse or a human doctor, they're not caring for the animal as well. It doesn't mean that they don't care for animals, but in their field, they're focusing just on one species. And compassion fatigue can affect your professional life and your personal life. And I have seen it affect not only Sophia Yin, obviously, but other veterinarians that I've worked with, technicians, dog trainers, even groomers that have been affected by this. And then I have watched it also affect many people personal life, many of my friends and colleagues. So it's important to understand the signs. What are the signs? So some of these signs can be interacted with other things, but depression can be seen, too much or too little sleep, fatigue, anxiety, isolation, and sometimes withdrawal, grief, appetite changes. Sometimes we eat more, sometimes we eat less, lack of motivation, lack of wanting to move forward, and suicidal thoughts. These are all things that can be seen in compassion fatigue. They can also be seen in other kinds of anxiety and stress, but if it correlates with your profession and or you see it affecting your work and your professional life, it may be actually compassion fatigue, not just anxiety, depression, or stress that's not related to your job. So other things you may notice are problems at work, chronically late or calling in sick, relationship issues, conflicts with friends, coworkers, or customers, really unhealthy coping skills, maybe alcohol and drug use, impulse shopping, binge eating. Some of these things, as I'm recording this, we're just finally at the end of COVID, but the stress of COVID-19 added to all of this. And I personally know many people that are in the veterinary medicine field, as well as dog trainers, who really suffered with the added stress of COVID. So hopefully you're starting to recognize these things so you can get help. And this nice little quote here: don't let your wounds turn you into someone you're not. So, if your pain starts to affect you as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, as a parent, as anything that you are, a sister, whatever you are, if this pain starts to affect other things in your life, it's getting more serious. It's one thing if it affects you, which it definitely is still already serious, but as it spreads, it's just harder and harder it becomes a snowball effect. So pretty soon your whole life is consumed by this compassion fatigue. Contributing risk factors to compassion fatigue are being unaware of compassion fatigue, which is the whole reason that I'm really recording this webinar for everyone to be able to have access to. Some other things that contribute are non-compliant clients or difficult cases. If you're a dog trainer, that really hard reactive dog case and the person's just not doing what you've asked them to do. If in the veterinary medicine field, those people who, bring in their dog because they're dying or they're really sick and they don't want to help them or can't help them financially. So that really adds to compassion fatigue. The inability to manage stress. That's been something that's been very obvious during COVID-19, is the people who can manage stress have managed COVID better than those who just can't. And being a perfectionist, it's one of the things that you just need to throw out the door and no longer really focus on. Progress versus perfection is always a better way to go. Having unrealistic expectations of yourself or others just sets you up for resentment and failure. And being unable to forgive yourself for making mistakes is a really big challenge if you're suffering from compassion fatigue. So having some self-compassion and self-empathy is one of the first steps to being able to get better. And if you don't have those things, you're at a higher risk of having compassion fatigue issues. So it's hard to admit when you're not coping with something. It's even harder to admit when you don't even know why you're not coping with in the first place. So it's really important to make sure you recognize, wait a minute, I'm having trouble. And Brene Brown talks about having marble friends or someone you can reach out to. So hopefully you have someone who you can say, look, I'm really struggling, that will understand you and not judge you. I'm really lucky to have some marble friends, and they really do have helped me through so many things, and that has helped reduce my opportunity of having compassion fatigue, which I have experienced some before. So having those friends and people that you can reach out to is really helpful. So oftentimes when we have compassion fatigue, one of the big problems is we often lack boundaries. Those of us who get into the animal field or in the animal care field or even the human care field, we oftentimes are people pleasers. It's just our innate human nature to want to please others. Sometimes we lack our worthiness or we lack confidence. We care for others before we care for ourselves. This is a huge part of the people who suffer from compassion fatigue and those who don't, is having those boundaries. And so it's something that if you don't have boundaries, you need to start practicing and learning. And sometimes that is more difficult than we might think. And so oftentimes these things come from, maybe there's some childhood things that you need to deal with, or maybe there's some experience you've had. But learning how to have boundaries really will help you control any kind of compassion fatigue. Another great Brene Brown quote: "Nothing is sustainable without boundaries." So boundaries are huge. It's something that you really, really need to learn how to do. And I can say, I know it's not easy. This is something I've had to struggle and learn how to do over the years. So looking at the phases of compassion fatigue, this comes from a great book, from To Save a Starfish by Jennifer Blau. This is a great book that it's a little workbook, and it can help you if you're recognizing that maybe you or someone you know has compassion fatigue. This is a great book to also purchase and look into to get more help. We oftentimes have the first phase, the zealot phase. So we're really excited, we're enthusiastic, we're committed to the cause, we're willing to go all the way, we want to make a difference. That is usually why veterinarians get into the veterinary field, dog trainers became dog trainers. When we really want to help and we have that desire to help, we're really excited when we get into it and we give everything. As a vet tech, I used to work 50 hours a week easily and just loved it. I was so passionate. I loved it. Before I learned how to have boundaries as a dog trainer, I had no boundaries. I gave to my clients all the time, not because I felt I had to at the time, because I loved it so much. And I really had this idea. I wanted to help everybody, and I really put myself on the back burner at that time. Then you start to go into the irritability phase. So you might start to cut corners a little bit. You might start to make mistakes. Sometimes we distance ourselves from family, friends, and coworkers. So I found that sometimes I wasn't as connected to my friends, or I was too busy to go and see friends, or too busy to do family functions. I would work on holidays. I would just give. And I did start to get somewhat irritable when I was experiencing this myself. So you need to recognize that's kind of that first stage of, maybe something's a little off. Then we go through a withdrawal phase, and our enthusiasm starts to turn into anger and bitterness. We neglect our loved ones and ourselves, and we start to put up a protective wall. A lot of times when we get to this phase, we start getting more frustrated with our clients. Maybe we're frustrated with our coworkers. Everybody seems to be, bothering us, bugging us somehow. And when you start to notice that, one time I was talking to somebody, and I was realizing that I was irritated by coworkers and my family. And somebody said, "What's the common denominator?" And it was me. I was the one that was irritated with all of these other people in my life. And it's a time to start to self-reflect and figure out what's going on with me, that all of a sudden these people I cared about and I enjoyed are no longer fun to be around. Then if you really aren't careful, you can get into the zombie phase. And that's when you really feel disconnected from your own feelings and thoughts. You don't even know how you feel anymore. You kind of go on autopilot. You may feel like you lost compassion. This is oftentimes when people might start to think they're feeling burnout. And I'm going to talk about the difference between compassion fatigue and burnout, because it does get a little bit confusing because they're very similar. Because at this point you feel like, I'm burned out, I don't care about this anymore. Maybe I'm going to change careers. And so it's really important to start, if you feel like you might be at this stage, recognize, is it burnout, or am I actually starting to really have some compassion fatigue? So there's a difference between the pathology, the victimization, versus maturation or renewal. Being overwhelmed and and you want to leave the field. So that's where, the victimization parts, or you develop resilience and fight. So one of the things when you're having compassion fatigue is learning how to be more resilient. But you have to kind of fight for it. It doesn't just come. Change is not easy for anyone, no matter what the change is. So when we have to start looking and getting out of that compassion fatigue mode, getting out of that victim mode and moving towards renewal and healthiness, it can be really, really difficult. So how do you develop resilience and fight? How do you get the strength to be stronger? And first of all, you have to be aware. So if you're watching this webinar, you're already on your way to getting better from compassion fatigue. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is scary. And being vulnerable is being able to say, I suffer from compassion fatigue. I'm really struggling. Being vulnerable means going to a therapist, talking to a friend, going to a coworker, going to a colleague, and saying, I think I need help. And that's really difficult, but that means you're on the way to getting healthy. Also understanding the difference between shame and guilt. So shame, if you learn more from Brene Brown, she explains this great. Shame means I'm bad. Guilt is I did something bad. And so when we stop feeling like we are bad, sometimes we make mistakes and maybe we did something wrong, we did something bad, and we can forgive ourselves for that, but we also have to start speaking our shame of feeling that we're bad, because we really aren't bad. We are just humans trying to get through this human experience. So then you have to start taking action and fighting that fear. Change is always scary. Getting help can be scary. Calling that therapist, telling that friend that you're struggling is scary. But if you can do it, again, it's the first step to getting healthy. So here we talk about the difference between compassion fatigue and burnout. So it's really important to know the difference so you know which one you're suffering from. With compassion fatigue, you're overly empathetic. So you care more about everyone else and not yourself. You're overly compassionate. Again, you're giving more to everyone else and you're not taking care of yourself. It could be a secondary trauma stress disorder. So oftentimes people with compassion fatigue, when I have spoken this in live or even talking to colleagues and talking to friends, a lot of times people who end up with compassion fatigue have other kinds of stress traumas in their lives. So whether it's from childhood, whether it's from a marriage, whether it's from friendships, there's some other trauma, and this is oftentimes secondary to some other trauma that you maybe haven't processed. And it will only change if you do the personal work. You can't just snap your fingers and have compassion fatigue go away. Whereas with burnout, you're usually overworked. You're working those long hours. You're giving, but you're giving that time. Maybe you're overly stressed. Maybe there's too much on your plate, and you're feeling really stressed. But the difference between burnout is you can change the situation or the environment, and the burnout will change. So if you reduce how much work you're doing, your burnout can decrease. If you spend a little bit more time exercising or eating better, your burnout can sometimes change. With compassion fatigue, there's so many more layers to it. You really need to do the personal work in order to overcome it. So if you want to know if you're at risk, there's this professional quality of life test. It's a self-test here on the slide. You can check out the website and do the self-test. That self-test will help you kind of realize if you're more at risk for compassion fatigue or if you're at burnout. But personally, I think if you are watching this and this is something you're feeling it's resonating with you, I think it's important to at least look further into compassion fatigue and getting some help. Even it may be short term if you're just at the beginning of your compassion fatigue, but if you're watching this, it's definitely something I think you should look into more. So no matter how long you have traveled in the wrong direction, you can always turn around. And that is such an important thing to remember, is it's never too late. And if we think back at the video you saw at the beginning with Sophia Yin, if she had been able to reach out, if she wasn't so worried about being perfect, maybe she would have reached out and said, hey, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm feeling like overstressed. I'm feeling I'm giving too much. Maybe somebody could have helped her and we would still have her on this planet. So we must stop the shame spiral. So it's really important that we stop blaming ourselves for all of these things. We can't fix the world all by ourselves, and we are just humans. So we need to be able to accept that that we are the people that we need to be. So you can watch this video and it'll help you kind of understand how to stop the shame spiral.
So I love this question. You mentioned gremlin thinking. This is from Allison Smella. You mentioned gremlin thinking. What's the silent language to move that aside and step into authenticity? Good question.
So men and women who had high levels of shame resilience, meaning they could totally acknowledge and move through shame without jeopardizing their authenticity, had 4 things in common. The first was they know what triggers shame for them. They know what the triggers are. Like for me, I know what the triggers are. I have stuff around motherhood and balancing work. I have stuff around appearance. Secondly, huge skill, you can reality check them. 3, you reach out and share your story. And 4, you speak shame. So just to boil it down, it's 3 totally counterintuitive things. Talk to yourself like you talk to someone you love when you're feeling unworthy. How would I talk to Ellen and Charlie in a moment of unworthiness? Would I ever, I would say to myself, God, you're so stupid, Brene, what were you thinking? I would never talk to my kids that way. Talk to yourself like you talk to someone you love. Reach out to someone you trust and tell your story. Shame cannot survive being spoken. It needs 3 things to just absolutely grow exponentially.
Yeah, that's why secrets really intensify the shame. And you're as sick as your secrets, because when you're ashamed, you keep it a secret, and that just sort of festers and ends up really overwhelming your life, the shame. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But when you release it, that's why all those years on the Oprah show, when people come on and share things that they never shared with anybody else, you leave and you feel freer. You feel unburdened by some of it. Yes.
Absolutely. Secrecy is one of the 3 things. Secrecy, silence, and judgment. Those are the 3 things shame needs to grow exponentially in our lives. The antidote, empathy. It cannot survive being spoken and being met with empathy.
So I hope you enjoyed that video of Oprah, and that's Brene Brown, the one I have been talking about. She is just phenomenal about talking about shame and has really helped us understand that culture a little bit more. So you can check out more of these online. The great thing about the internet now is, you can look up, Brene Brown has a website and she has so many things. And then obviously Oprah has a lot of more resources as well. Once you were aware, you can get help. That's exactly why I'm doing this webinar for you, is that once you understand that this is out there and you're aware of it, then you can get help. When Sophia Yin passed away, it was an eye-opening experience for the veterinary community because we didn't really talk about it at all. And we still don't talk about it a lot. I know so many people are stressed and they just keep going through the grind. And then one day they just make decisions that change everyone's life that's in their life. So make sure, if you're aware, get help. And I love this picture of this flight attendant putting on her oxygen mask. And as a mom of 3, I was told this when they were young, on airplanes and off, that you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you put on your child's, because if you don't get yours on first and you pass out, no one can help your kids. So putting your oxygen mask on first is such a hard concept for us, those of us who like to give. But if we don't help ourselves, we can't help other people. So it's really important to think that. And this visual has been something that I've learned in my own personal work. It's been something I've used in my professional work, that put your oxygen mask on before you try to help others. Because if you have your oxygen mask, you can help so many more people than if you are depleted of that oxygen. So Pet Sitters International has this great little meme here, and it says, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. And that was by Jack Kornfeld. And it really is important that we have, no matter what field you're in, and it doesn't matter, this could even be for moms that are at-home moms. If you don't have compassion for yourself, you're not going to be as good of a mom or a stay-at-home dad. This really should be something, although it's focused on veterinary field and animal field, it could be applied to anyone that really just cares a lot. So make sure you have some compassion for yourself. So now it's time for change. And like I mentioned before, change is hard no matter what. So hopefully this change will be something you can do. The biggest thing I've learned in life and with other people is baby steps. Baby steps are important. Whether you're teaching a dog, whether you're helping somebody else, whether you're doing it yourself, no matter what, whenever we change, we have to do it in baby steps. Big leaps are really difficult. And so you want to make sure that you're always doing baby steps. And just like if you think about climbing up a ladder has, a ladder that has rungs that are really close together, it's going to be easier to get up that ladder than one that has them really spread out. Because if they're really spread out, you're going to have to jump to get to that ring and pull yourself up. And it's actually going to take longer. A lot of times tell my clients that fast is slow and slow is fast. So if we take our time and we go slow, we actually make faster progress than if we try to do things really fast, we actually slow down our progress. So baby steps is important, and making yourself a priority. And I know any of you who are watching this might be like a big step right here. Just making yourself a priority. That is huge. And it is something that I struggle with every single day. I have to make the decision every day to make myself a priority. And sometimes it's harder when my kids' schedule gets busy, or when they were all home homeschooling and I was trying to keep my business going. When I don't make myself a priority, everything falls apart. And then creating boundaries, back to that word, boundaries, that we were just talking about. I love this phrase, but it is sometimes is hard. Good fences make good neighbors. I live in California, so everyone has fences. So we have our private backyards. But sometimes on the East Coast or in the Midwest, people don't have fences. And I do know that sometimes that's a problem if people are coming in and out of your yard. So think about a boundary as a fence. It's not meant to be something that, you can have a gate in your fence. You can see over your fence, but you need to have some kind of boundary so that you're not always just letting people in and out. Sometimes you might need to put your phone on do not disturb, whether it's at night or when you're in meetings. I turn off my phone a lot. For me personally, I don't have a sound for my phone when I have texts. I don't have a sound. I've never had a sound ever since I got my phone, because the dings disrupt me and they distract me. And I figure if someone texts me, I will get that back to them as soon as I can. I don't need to hear the ding. I check my phone throughout the day so I can see that they left me a message. If I'm in the middle of something, I turn off my ringer so that I'm not disturbed. Putting up notices on your email, vacation notices, making sure that you let your time be yours and that you don't always let people impose on that time that's for you. Practicing saying no. And I know saying no is a practice. I've also learned that saying no is a full sentence. So you don't always have to give a reason why you say no. But sometimes you need to say no so that you can put those boundaries up. Make sure you put me time on your calendar. For me, a big thing that I have put on my calendar is going on hikes, so that I hike and so I have some me time. Or I have to drive my kids around to school and to different activities. And I started listening to audiobooks while I'm driving because that's me time. And I really enjoy that. And it makes me not resent driving them everywhere because I get to listen to my book while I'm in the car. So however you have to be creative for that me time. Maybe it's getting up earlier in the morning and meditating or doing yoga. Maybe it's reading a book, getting a novel. Maybe it's learning about something. Maybe it's doing a craft. Whatever it is, schedule that into your week, if you can, multiple times a week, so that you can bring yourself back to you, because that for me has been a really big game changer as well. And then again, it's speaking your shame, speaking your secrets. Tell your family and friends so they can support you. During COVID, my kids, we all started hiking and we started making it a family event. And then they would say, Mom, what time are we going to hike? And so even on those days, maybe I didn't want to hike, they wanted to hike, so we went. I found hiking places that I really liked and that my kids really liked, going to the beach or in the mountains. And that helped me stay motivated. Having friends that I set up time with or that I check in with, and we all support each other. And the more you talk about it, the better it is, because then everybody can help support you and help you get better. Self-care is obviously a huge part of getting over and preventing any kind of compassion fatigue. And self-care is always hard. That's why there's so many self-help and self-care books, because self-care is almost like a little cliche word now, but it really is important that you take care of yourself. Remember, you have to put the oxygen mask on you before you can help anyone else. So I just talked a little bit about this, but just to repeat it because it is so important. Exercise can be a great self-care. And it can be whatever you like: walking, running, biking, swimming, yoga, hiking. Personally, I'm not a big swimmer, but I love hiking. I like going out on my bike. I like doing yoga. So I find things that I enjoy, and then I feel better after I do them. Maybe doing some mindfulness things, meditating, doing a gratitude journal, praying. I like to every night be grateful for what happened today that I'm grateful for. Or maybe in the mornings, if I'm struggling because I have a really busy day, I might pray and say, and whether you believe in God or a universe or whatever, just saying, I just please give me a good day today, or give that intention of today's going to be a good day. Make it an affirmation, not necessarily just a prayer. Finding a hobby that you are passionate about and that you enjoy, that you want to do, that you can't wait to get back to. So maybe it's painting or taking pictures or playing music. My son is learning the banjo and it becomes his passion. I love taking pictures. I also like to paint. So what I have to do is create a space where my paint is, because if I have to get all the stuff out and do all the things, by the time I do that, I don't have time to do the hobby that I want. So make sure you create it in your schedule or in your day. Maybe you create a space in your house where your hobby or your craft is. Maybe you leave your guitar out so that you remember to play it. Whatever you need to do, just take care of that so that you can, in the future, keep doing your hobby. Again, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. I've been talking about it throughout the whole talk. People are super important. So whether that's a support group, there's a lot of online support groups. There's a lot of Facebook support groups. There's in-person support groups. Getting coffee or lunch with a friend on a regular basis if you need to. Having check-ins. One of my girlfriends was suffering from a lot of anxiety, and we just made it a point to at least text each other every day or get on the phone, even if it was just for a few minutes. And the support that we built not only made our friendship stronger, but it also helped both of us get through some really tough times. And finding that person or those people that you can say anything to and they won't judge you, so important. So if you at least have one of those, that's amazing. If you need, go to a therapist. Get help. You need people to help. You can't do this alone. Getting outside, getting sunshine, getting fresh air is really important. So if you like gardening, again, hiking, camping, I love camping, so I try to do it as much as I can. I love waking up in a campsite in the morning, the fresh air. Being outside is such a big part for me. And it really, fresh air is important, but being in sunshine is also a big deal. It can really help boost your immunity and your moods. So trying to get outside at least a little bit every day, walk around the block if you have to. Whatever you have to do, make sure you get some outside time every single day. And then eating healthy and getting sleep. Sometimes when you're suffering from compassion fatigue, your sleep can be off. So try to find ways to sleep, whether it's some natural supplements, aromatherapy, essential oils. If you need something like that, talk to your doctor if you need to. One of my friends actually sought out a nutritionist because she was having so much stress. And she found that when she started eating healthier, she did better. I have found the same thing, as if I eat healthier, I feel better. So eating and sleeping. Sleeping is probably one of the most important things to help your body, your mind, your body, and your spirit heal. So you need to get sleep, however you need to do that. But it is actually when your body has the most time to heal is when you're sleeping. So obviously, if you look at this list, if you need to snapshot this list, take a picture of it, screenshot it, put it on your mirror in your bathroom or put it on your refrigerator, because self-care is so important. It's making you a priority. It's putting that oxygen mask on first. It's super important that you take care of yourself. Nothing can get better if you don't take care of yourself. So I'm going to take a second because this is so important that I want you to write it down. I want you to take a picture of it, screenshot it, whatever you need to do. Obviously, it's limitless of what kind of things you do for self-care. So maybe what you love isn't on this list, and that's totally fine. Just make sure you take care of yourself. So there's also things that we need to avoid when we're suffering or possibly suffering from compassion fatigue. And that is stop labeling others. This little sticker here is actually from Susan Friedman at behaviorworks.com. You can actually order these stickers if you want from her. But she wrote this for animals and also for kids because she works with kids with disabilities. And sometimes when we slap labels on ourselves or on other people, it creates judgment. And sometimes labels are necessary for like diagnosis or for something like that. But most of the time, labels are really not that important unless we need it for a diagnosis. So stop labeling ourselves stupid or, tired or even, stressed. Anything we call ourselves, sometimes it goes into our thoughts and then our thoughts become what we are. So you want to try to avoid labeling others. But that labeling also will sometimes cause judgment or resentment. Stop pressuring yourselves with the should and should nots. Should is a really dangerous word. I should see more clients. I should eat healthier. I should do this. Try not to use that word should because it really makes you feel bad about yourself. Say, I'm going to do this. Remember, go back to that other slide we talked about where it's just baby steps. We're not talking that you're going to change your life in a day, but these baby steps over time, I promise you, if you take one baby step at a time, you will get better. And I want you to also not think in black and white. You got to kind of sometimes think in gray because sometimes things aren't black and white. Sometimes there's a middle ground, Sometimes you have to say, well, most of the time I don't want to do this and I do want to do this, but sometimes I can make a compromise. So trying not to get into that solid thinking will also help you not be so stressed about things because when we think in black and white and then it doesn't go out our way, sometimes we struggle to be able to see that gray. Slowing down. This was a huge thing. It's still something, again, I work on every day because I like to do things. I'm active. I'm adventurous. I like to be out. And sometimes I have to slow down, particularly if something is hurting my feelings or upsetting me or making me angry. I gotta slow down and think about my response so that I know exactly and recognizing my feelings, naming my feelings. Wow, this makes me feel a little angry. This makes me feel sad. This makes me feel excited. And slow down so that you have a chance to really respond the way you want to respond. Breathe when you begin to feel stress. Taking that breath. We always talk about it. Taking a deep breath. It's amazing how much a deep breath can help. And counting to 10, walking outside, whatever you need, take a breath when you feel stress and it will start to lower that anxiety level. And really determine how urgent something really is. As a vet tech and a mom, sometimes things feel like it's really right here. And there's a phrase, how important is it? So sometimes I stop and think, okay, how important is it? Maybe I have stacks on my desk sometimes, piles of papers and files that I have to take care of and kid things I have to take care of. And I'll sit down and go, okay, how important is it? And I will actually put things in piles like, okay, this can wait until next week. This is something I need to take care of today. This is something I can take care of tomorrow. And that helps me not feel quite as overwhelmed. Then there's some great meditation apps because sometimes we're not always great at meditating on our own. Headspace is really popular. Insight is one that I've used and has a lot of variety. And then Calm is also another one. So these are things you can check out, download them on your phone. And if you need, some of them offer just a 2-minute or a 5-minute meditation. So you don't have to sit down and commit to an hour meditation if you don't have time. But just taking those couple minutes can really change a lot of things. Again, getting help, talking to your friends. Find a therapist if you reach out to a therapist that understands compassion fatigue because not all therapists do understand compassion fatigue and oftentimes it's a trauma specialist that will understand because like we talked about in one of the previous slides, this is oftentimes secondary trauma. So it's important that you find somebody who has some trauma therapy. Sometimes there's things like EMDR or different kinds of therapies that aren't just traditional talk therapy that might help you as well. Finding a support group in person, online, on Facebook. Make sure, I've been on lots of different support groups over my lifetime, and you want to make sure you find one that's positive and stays positive because sometimes, especially online or Facebook, support groups, people can dig this really deep hole of negativity, and you really want to try to stay positive. So I've had to delete sometimes online support groups as well as Facebook support groups because they are not positive, and I actually feel worse after being on them. So if you feel that, then just get rid of them and try another one. But together we can get stronger. You can't do this alone. We need each other to be able to get better. So as you get better, or as you're recognizing that you might have compassion fatigue, really recognize and take the moment to what is in your self-care toolbox. So if you don't have it readily available when you feel stressed, you're not going to be able to run to it. So I have a novel sitting by my bed that if I only have sometimes 10 minutes, but I need to get my brain out of something, maybe I'm worried about a client or I'm worried about something in my life. Sometimes if I can get to a really good novel and read just for 10 minutes, it'll help me calm down. Maybe I like to look at funny videos. So I downloaded on my phone American Funniest Video app. So I'll watch some funny videos. Maybe I go on a walk around the neighborhood. Maybe I go outside. I'm creating a meditation garden in my backyard. So all I have to do is walk outside and I can hopefully feel some calmness. So you just have to do what is best for you, but try to make things so they're easy accessible. Like I said with the painting, if I have to go through and get all my paints out and get all my stuff out, by the time I do it, I don't have time to paint anymore. So if you want more information, I know this has been a lot, but hopefully this is just opening your eyes a little bit more about what compassion fatigue is. Here are a couple books, Compassion Fatigue, Coping with Secondary Traumatic Stress Disorders in Those Who Treat the Traumatized. So that's the Charles Figley, I had his quote earlier, To Save a Starfish, a compassion fatigue workbook for animal welfare warrior. That is another really great workbook to work through, and it helps you find self-care and it helps you figure out where you might need the most help. So that's a really great resource as well. So I would check these out. If you're feeling like this is resonating with you, check out one of these books for sure. And then I highly, highly recommend, this is just one of Brene Brown's books, but she has a lot of them. And I think she's great. You can also check her out on her blogs and her websites. She has online courses. It does interviews. She has TED Talks that are amazing. She really is helping us see how things are different in the world. Like we don't have to deal with that shame and some of the stress that we deal with. So my call to action for you is to get help if you need it. We're only as sick as our secrets. Talk to others. Knowledge is power. Part of the reason I want to do this webinar and I'm offering it is because I want people to be able to understand they're not alone. And if we talk about it, then everybody knows they're not alone and they don't feel so isolated anymore. And as Ellen DeGeneres always says, be kind to one another, because we are all just humans trying to get through this world, and I can guarantee you no one is perfect. We all have demons inside that we're struggling with. So as we start to experience and recognize that, we have more compassion for ourselves as well as others. Self-respect, self-worth, and self-love all start with self. Stop looking outside of yourself for your value. So that's really important. You have to heal from inside before you can help others. So if you're an animal care worker, you have to take care of yourself so you can keep taking care of those animals. So together we can make a difference. Check out this video. It will really help you a little bit more understand the dilemmas of compassion fatigue in the animal field.
You're working long days and long hours. You go to work in the dark, you go home in the dark. I don't have a personal life. I don't go on vacation. I don't talk to my family like I used to. Now it's not fun in a career, it's an obligation. Did I hesitate for that 1 second that caused that patient its life? Am I good enough? I shouldn't have missed it. That is always what's going to weigh on a technician's mind. After months and months of that, it puts a wear and tear on you. And you keep getting deeper and deeper in this hole. And I'm just so tired. Why do I even do this? Why am I in this field? Why am I even in this world?
all I could remember was, did this doctor already do something? Did this doctor take something? I didn't know. My situation just happened to be one where the doctor did not end up taking my life. Now, when I look back at that scenario, so many things that I thought were a performance issue or were a bad client day, I never stopped to think about their actions may have nothing to do with our clinic. And that's hard, looking back and realizing that you missed something. I don't let a front down that shows that I ever had a hard time. I guess I fit that mold then of the person who makes every day look like everything went perfectly, holds it all back from maybe those that might see me as weaker. Isn't that why we don't talk about this? Because if I share this, I'm seen as, should I have the job I have? Should I have the right to make choices that I have? It's all seen as a weakness.
In my own case, I had 2 team members over my career as a hospital administrator commit suicide. It was just not something that we had ever been trained in our industry to handle. It was not something that I had really ever had any training in my personal life to handle. All I knew to do was just be there for my team. I've been asked if I saw any signs that there was a problem, and I didn't. I would hope that I would have recognized the signs and would have been able to help. Because there were no signs, I think there was also more of a burden to the team. They each in their own way had something they felt guilty about.
My own story in relationship to suicide awareness came from my own husband, a veterinarian who committed suicide. I think if you think someone is in a situation where they're that depressed, I personally think it's okay to ask them if they're contemplating suicide, only because that way you can get an idea as to the depth of their depression and desperation. And at that point, I think trying to support them in terms of, is there something I can do? That may be helpful.
I feel my healing in sharing. I do have people I lean on, and they've helped me through things. It is worth taking time to stop the day and pull them aside. Something that's this important that can stop an action and keep your peer with you is worth 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
It only took one person to say, you're having a problem. You need help. That support is kind of what pulled me out.
I am so thankful that our industry is beginning to realize how prevalent suicide is, how prevalent depression is, and there are more and more resources for us.
So possibly that video also resonated with you or touched a part of you. So if you're an animal care worker, just realize you're not alone, and we need to be talking about this. We need to make this go viral so that we don't have to suffer anymore. We shouldn't be having any more suicides in our field because of compassion fatigue. It's important to be courageous. So being courageous doesn't mean that you aren't afraid. It just means your bravery overcomes your fears. And I have learned over my life that if I'm afraid of something, most of the time, I just have to be brave and resilient, and it just makes me stronger. And actually, I feel like it's making me a better person when I face those fears and I don't let them control me. So I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. Feel free to tell others about it and share it, because I would really like this to become something that people start talking about again more. It's such a crisis now, even more so with our global pandemic. So hopefully this will be something that you can spread to your family and friends If you have any questions or comments, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and our info, and if you want to email us, you can email me at info@trulyforcefree.com. Check out more things on trulyforcefree.com, more webinars about training and animal care. But if this is something that has touched you, please let us know, because we just want to help. And I hope you enjoy this webinar, and we'll see you next time.